Welcome back. The South African Communist Party's outgoing General Secretary, Dr. Blade Nzimande, says that young people are bearing the brunt of the current economic crisis. Nzimande says when the economy fails to perform optimally, it is the youth that's worst affected. The SACP's elective Congress is currently underway in Boksburg, that's east of Johannesburg. Nzimande has told delegates that it's not party positions that leaders should be worried about, but how to better the lives of South Africans.
The current socio-economic crisis is deeply felt by the condition of the youth in our society, especially the exceedingly high levels of youth unemployment. One particular manifestation of the crisis facing young people is that nearly 4 million young people between the ages of 15 and 24 years are neither in education, employment, or training. This segment of young people is largely made up of youth from black working class and poor families.
Let's talk more about the SACP's National Congress. We're joined this afternoon by political analyst Dr. Ibrahim Harvey. Dr. Harvey, a very good afternoon to you. Welcome to Daytime Update. So Blade Nzimande there talks, I suppose, rightly so, about the economic challenges and the effects on the youth of this country. But you wonder how many of the young people in this country would even relate or resonate with the ideological position and the work of the SACP.
Yeah, you know, I heard what Blade had to say now. Honestly, I find it very intriguing that he could speak about the youth, the unemployment crisis, the black working class. You know, I mean, we've got the biggest social crisis ever in the history of South Africa, including the apartheid period too. I mean, unemployment, inequalities, poverty is at its worst levels, and you'd expect leadership from a communist party. When you're faced with you expect leadership. I mean, this is the problem. You know, I listened to Blade earlier. He was also being interviewed. Blade waffles. Because I've asked the key question. I was interviewed yesterday. I asked, what has the SACP achieved from 1994? You see, the understanding was that the ANC after 1994, we want political democracy, the right to vote, etc. And in terms of the ANC, SACP's approach of a two-stage, we expected that from 1994, the SACP would be waging now more openly a struggle for socialism. You tell me where that has occurred, and especially, I've asked the question repeatedly, I researched this area, basic services, water, sanitation, etc. The SACP is nowhere to be seen in black working class townships since 1994, where these struggles over basic services have been waged. So, you know, therefore I find it very hypocritical of Blade to be speaking about the black working class youth and working class and these issues and the socio-economic crisis, and they are nowhere to be seen. What he did this morning was to say, no, the SACP, you know, they were involved in the redlining, the financial sector reforms, and indeed they want some gains there. But that is more distant from the needs and interests of the black working class. And with this massive crisis in the township, it's water, sanitation, electricity, housing, health. Those are the key issues facing the working class at this moment. And you know what? No attempt has been made to make inroads and to organize resistance and give leadership to those struggles being waged in the townships, because the SACP has got no organizational presence in the townships among the communities, because if it did, it would surely be taking up these struggles. I mean, you know, we've had an unstoppable avalanche of township protests from June 2004. It's 18 years now. It's in your face. It's in the news every day. And
right.
You ask, where is the South African Communist Party? Those are working class youth and people involved in those struggles. The SACP, a Communist Party, must give leadership to the working class and its struggles. And I'm telling you, there's been nothing the SACP has done, you know. This is my biggest problem with the SACP, really, and this is what I have to start with saying, you know, in response to your question.
Just on that then, you say, where is the SACP? In another of the interviews that Blade Nzimande has given now, as he comes to the end of 24 years as General Secretary of the SACP, and I'll read you the quote. It said here that the SACP has become a home of over 300,000 members, right, from just 10,000 when he took over in 1998. So if there's growth in numbers, why has that not translated into actual things that we can say the SACP has actively achieved of its own in changing South Africa?
But that's the big question. Okay, you're saying 300,000. To be honest with you, I think it's considerably below that. Let me tell you what the trend of both the ANC and SACP is. Historically, you can go do research. They inflate their membership. But let's leave that for the moment. In fact, it serves my argument better to say that they've got 300,000 or even more members. Then the question, as you yourself have put, why are they not then a formidable force for change? Where do you think this crisis we are going through is most tangibly affect people? It's in the townships, more than anywhere else. So you'd want to give leadership and be involved, shoulder by shoulder with the people involved in those struggles in the townships. The SACP, believe me, this is the biggest challenge. And they have failed to answer that question because I have mentioned this thing several times on TV over the years. I've been interviewed about the SACP and these matters many times, and I've said the same things. And never has the SACP responded in writing or in a debate where they then provide countervailing evidence to say, no, but what are you talking about? We are involved in those black working class struggles in the township. Now, you know what? There's a serious point to this because water, sanitation, electricity, you can see what we're having with Eskom, housing, schooling, health, those are the most important things that affect people's lives. Now, if a Communist Party can't give leadership to the struggles to better the lives of people regarding those basic services, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? This is the problem.
Does this National Congress offer the SACP a chance at reinvention, especially if there's likely to be then a new General Secretary elected?
Yes, let me tell you, I was on TV yesterday and asked the same question. So, I had more time to think, so I'll be able to respond to you. I think key and critical, but I'm worried because this morning I heard him say on TV, because questions are being raised now, and I must tell you, Blade has been an obstruction. I know it. I've spoken to SACP members in the rank and file who wanted to go it alone in elections over 10 years ago. And they'll tell you Blade has been the biggest obstacle to the SACP entering the electoral scene as an independent force. Well, if a decision could be taken, there's only way in which, you see, the SACP has played second fiddle to the ANC, the dominant ruling party, etc. In everything, it has been subservient to the SACP. If it can get out of the shadow of the ANC, a decision in this conference that it will contest elections on its own going forward, maybe it will be made easier to reach that decision if Blade is going to be gone. That is the only way in which you could have a rejuvenation. And, the SACP could become a formidable force in this election, because if it enters the elections on its own terms, in its own name, and independent of the SACP, and rallies and wins a lot of support, it could itself become a pole of attraction for the people are looking for a way forward, especially the working class. The ANC has disappointed everything. So, the ANC has disappointed the masses very seriously. The SACP has got a chance if it resolves at this conference to enter the elections independently, any future elections, and build support in that way. That is the only prospect, I believe, that exists for the party to reinvent itself and cast itself in a different light going forward, but independent of the ANC. What has 28, 29 years of an alliance for the ANC done for the SACP? What has it done? The SACP, what can it refer to as key moments when its association and alliance with the ANC has won major victories? that the black working class has benefited from. You know, he talks about the land question and the financial sector, and true, there's been some gains. But the more distant issues, the key biggest problems facing people are housing, water, sanitation, electricity, health services, etc.
How can, though, Dr. Harvey, the SACP distinguish itself in the way that you're suggesting when it is still so committed to the idea of a tripartite alliance? I mean, the debate about whether or not the SACP will go it alone, in terms of elections, is an old one, and many people were saying, even at the start of this Congress, quite boring actually, because it's brought up but never actually happens. How much of its reinvention, do you think, lies in SACP leaders perhaps not allowing themselves to be part of an ANC cabinet? Because that too has been criticized by people who say, well, you're co-opted, therefore you have to endorse these decisions because you're in the cabinet that makes them.
But that's the thing, you see, and it's not going to be an easy decision because the SACP has lived alongside, it's been part of this ruling alliance, you know, Cronin before, Blade, and, you know, people have moved into ministerial. That has been the agreement, basically. As I said yesterday, the SACP would get some posts in cabinet, but they've got to keep their rank and file and members in check and don't give the ANC any serious problems. But this is a very major problem, because it will have massive ramifications. If the SACP has to go it on its own, it will virtually collapse the alliance. That's the problem, because, you know, if it's going to go on its own, it breaks a key component of this alliance, which is that they enter the election, that the SACP and COSATU campaigns for an ANC victory in elections. That is what I think people are afraid to. I don't know if they're also afraid of how well they will do if they're on their own, independent of the ANC, and whether they will win significant support at the polls. I don't know. Maybe they're not sufficiently confident about doing that, but that is going to be the only way in which the SACP could reinvent itself and really become, I think it has the potential. People are looking for an alternative way forward, especially the working class.
I wonder,
it could
Dr.
be
Harvey,
that, but really, yes?
Sorry, pardon me. We're just almost out of time, but I'd like to squeeze in two questions as we conclude. One to do with how much of what comes out of Boksburg at the end of this week will likely affect or influence the outcomes of the ANC's National Congress at the end of the year, and also your take on the unhappiness among some delegates with the ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa speaking last or after the political report has been delivered and basically becoming the keynote speaker in that way. Does that suggest then that there is a shift internally towards the direction that you are advocating for?
Well, you know, I'm not too sure about that. What I can tell you is that, and in fact, Blade answered this question this morning. He was asked about, you know, how they see the Ramaphosa leadership and, you know, going forward to the December electoral conference of the ANC. And he was quite categorical and clear that he, and I think the SACP, supports Ramaphosa's leadership. And I think, therefore, they will support him for a second term. And once that happens, you know, if the SACP throws their weight behind his re-election in December, I'm certain, and COSATU, well, I think he's got COSATU in the bag already because, you know, it comes from the unions and so on. But if the SACP, which is bound to happen now, from what Blade said this morning, you know, but Ramaphosa himself, as you can see, is in very serious trouble. The latest with what is happening on his farm. Let me tell you, I mean, I have a column in News 25 already indicated it's possible that he might not even stand in December. If the charges are laid and he has to step aside, he will not be able to enter those elections as a candidate. What happens now in the run-up to and you know, where the charges are laid, there are big questions and we don't know what will happen. Because I'll tell you, don't exclude the likelihood that Ramaphosa is not a candidate in December. If depending on where the charges are preferred by the NPA and the prosecuting authorities, you know, things could change. And I mean, it would be very serious because if he doesn't stand for re-election and someone else, let's say in the Magashule Zuma camp stands and wins, I think honestly, you know, and I've said this many times, we're probably in for more problems That is the dilemma that we sit with. Despite all his failures and weaknesses and indecision, this is Ramaphosa. He is relatively still the best candidate for the ANC and an anti-corruption campaign, and one has to give him some due. I mean, he has over the past year, and look how he's responded to the Zondo Commission. We just got to see how seriously he takes implementation of the recommendations coming from the Zondo Commission. But Cyril has made a difference, and that is the problem, I just hope that he still stands in December, and that his problems that he has now doesn't translate into him not standing at all.
Right.
We Zuma camp and then would love to see happen.
Dr. Ibrahim Harvey, always good to speak to you, sir. Thank you very much for your time today.